3. Disturbing true trucker horror stories. Like and subscribe so you don't miss our next chilling horror story with new stories every week. I've been a long-haul trucker for about 15 years now. I've seen my fair share of weird stuff out on the road, late-night wildlife, strange people, even full-on hallucinations from sleep deprivation. But there's one night I'll never forget, and I still don't have an explanation for it. This happened about 6 years ago, somewhere in northern Arizona. I was driving a shipment of construction supplies from Phoenix up to Salt Lake City. The route took me through a long stretch of desert highway, US Route 89. That part of the state is beautiful, but also desolate. No lights, no towns, just open road, rock formations, and cactus as far as the eye can see. It was just past 2 a.m. when it started to rain. That might not sound unusual, but rain in that area at that time of year was rare. The sky had been clear an hour earlier. Suddenly, it was like someone flipped a switch. Heavy drops pounded my windshield, and the wipers barely kept up. My CB radio crackled, but no one else seemed to be on this stretch. I was alone, or so I thought. That's when I saw him. He was walking on the side of the road, just outside the reach of my headlights. At first I thought it was a hitchhiker, tall figure wearing something bright. But as I got closer, I saw that he was wearing an orange raincoat. Bright orange, like the kind road workers wear. But here's the thing. It wasn't reflective. There were no stripes, no gear, just solid orange, and he was soaked. As I passed him, he turned to look at me. And I swear to God, his face was wrong. Not deformed or scary, just blank, like he didn't have enough features, almost like a mannequin. No emotion, just staring. I didn't slow down. I didn't stop. Something about him felt off. A few miles down the road, I thought I'd lost him. But then, about 20 minutes later, I saw him again. Same orange raincoat, same blank stare, standing by the side of the road. There was no turnoff, no vehicle, no way he could have gotten ahead of me. Not unless he'd walked through the desert in the pouring rain and somehow outran my truck doing 60 miles per hour. I got that tight, sinking feeling in my chest. I grabbed the CB and called out, "Anyone out on 89 northbound? Just passed some weird guy in a raincoat twice." No response. Static. That's when the radio crackled, and I heard a voice. But it wasn't another trucker. It was a whisper, like someone breathing right into the mic. "Don't stop." That was it. I threw the mic down. The rain got harder. My GPS started glitching, jumping all over the map. My headlights flickered. The electrical in my truck had never done that before. And then, my headlights hit something up ahead. It was a rest stop. Just a dirt pull-off with a single bench and a trash can. I figured maybe I'd stop for 5 minutes, check the wiring or the lights. Bad idea. As I slowed down and pulled off, I saw the man again. He was standing next to the bench, perfectly still, facing the road. I froze. Something in my brain was screaming not to get out. I didn't know what this thing was, but it wasn't human. Or at least, it wasn't just human. I reached for the gear shift, ready to floor it out of there when he moved. But he didn't walk. He slid. One moment he was next to the bench. The next, he was right beside the cab of my truck. I didn't even see him take a step. I screamed and hit the gas. My tires kicked up gravel as I peeled back onto the highway. I didn't look back. I couldn't. After that, everything returned to normal. The rain stopped about 10 miles later. The GPS stabilized. The CB went quiet. I made it to Salt Lake by morning, dead tired but alive. I told a buddy about it later. He's been driving longer than me. He just nodded and said, "I've heard stories like that. The desert out there, it holds things. Old things, spirits, ghosts. Whatever you saw, good thing you didn't open your door." I haven't seen the man in the orange raincoat since. But sometimes, when I drive that stretch of road, I think about him. And I wonder, what would have happened if I'd stopped? I've been a long-haul trucker for nearly 2 decades. You see a lot of weird stuff on the road at night. But this story still chills me years after it happened. I was running a route through the back roads of Oklahoma. Nothing but flat, open land and 2-lane highways for miles. It was around 2:30 in the morning. I had my windows cracked, sipping gas station coffee and listening to some true crime podcast to stay alert. There wasn't a car in sight for at least 45 minutes. Just the endless stretch of highway and the rhythmic hum of the engine. That's when I saw him. A man was standing in the shallow ditch beside the road, facing away from me. He was completely still. No movement at all. He wore a light-colored jacket and jeans. What struck me was how clean his clothes looked. Too clean for someone standing in the mud and weeds of a drainage ditch at that hour. I slowed down slightly as I passed, trying to get a better look. But the instant my headlights swept over him, he dropped, just collapsed, flat into the ditch like someone had pulled his legs out from under him. It was a sudden, unnatural fall. I checked my mirrors. He didn't get up. I drove maybe half a mile before I pulled over. Every instinct said to keep driving. But if that was someone who needed help, I couldn't just leave them. So I grabbed my flashlight and walked back along the side of the road. When I got back to the spot, he was gone. I scanned the ditch with the flashlight. There were muddy footprints, freshly pressed, and what looked like knee marks where he'd dropped. But no sign of him. No movement. No sound. I called out. No response. I stood there for a minute, shining the light into the dark field beyond the ditch, feeling that awful sensation that someone was watching me. The wind picked up just a little, rustling the grass. But otherwise, it was dead silent. I turned back to the truck and nearly jumped out of my skin. There was a figure standing in the middle of the road behind me. Same jacket, same jeans. He stood there, back still to me, just like before. I hadn't heard a single footstep. I froze. Every hair on my body stood up. My mouth went dry. I started backing slowly toward my truck, keeping the flashlight pointed at him. As I moved, I noticed something else. His shadow was wrong. The moon was behind me, and the beam of my flashlight was directly on him. But his shadow stretched sideways, not backward, and it was twitching, like it was flickering in place. I blinked, Trying to make sense of it, that's when he moved. Not turned. Moved. Like he was on a track, gliding across the pavement in that same rigid, upright position. No arm swing, no head movement. Just silently sliding toward the ditch again. I didn't wait. I ran full sprint to the truck, jumped in, locked the doors, and peeled out. In the rear-view mirror, I could just barely make him out, standing in the ditch again, facing away. I drove for a solid hour before I calmed down enough to pull off at a truck stop. I didn't tell anyone about it, not that night, and not for a long time after. Who would believe me? But a few months later, I was at a diner in Missouri, talking with another trucker I'd met a few times before. We got to swapping creepy stories, and I finally shared what I saw. I expected him to laugh, but instead, he just stared at me. Then he said, "You were on Route 177? I nodded slowly. He let out a breath and said, "I saw him too. About 5 years ago. Exact same thing. Standing in the ditch, drops out of sight, then shows up behind you. But mine followed me for a couple 100 miles. That made my stomach turn." He said he kept catching glimpses of a man in a light jacket standing on overpasses, in rest-stop parking lots, even once in the side mirror of his cab while parked at night. Always still, always facing away, and always gone when you looked directly. We compared notes, different years, different sightings, but always the same behavior, same area, same vanishing act. I did some digging after that, and I found at least 3 other stories posted anonymously on trucking forums, each describing a man on Route 177, appearing and disappearing in the exact same way. One guy even wrecked his rig trying to avoid hitting him after he appeared in the middle of the road. They all described the same thing, the way he moves, the unnatural shadow, and that awful cold feeling, like the air around him was drained of everything warm and human. I've avoided Route 177 ever since. It added a couple extra hours to my usual route, but I never cared. Not after that. I don't know if what I saw was a ghost, something paranormal, or maybe just a hallucination from too many sleepless nights. But I do know this. Whatever that thing was, it wanted me to follow it. That's why it stood in the ditch. That's why it collapsed. That's why it reappeared behind me. And I think if I'd stayed there a minute longer, I would have. I've been an over-the-road trucker for almost 2 decades now. I've driven through every kind of weather, in every kind of place, from remote Alaskan routes to the deserts of Arizona. And in all those years, I've only had one experience that made me consider quitting for good. It happened in 2017. I was hauling a refrigerated load from Utah to Kansas, and I was a few hours ahead of schedule. It was about 2:30 a.m. when I started getting tired, and my eyes began to blur. I decided to pull into the next rest stop and catch a quick nap. I was somewhere in western Colorado, driving down an old stretch of US 50. It's a 2-lane highway, not very well lit, and surrounded mostly by scrubland and hills. About 10 miles outside a small town, I saw a faded blue highway sign for a rest area. Just a basic stop, no gas station, no food, just bathrooms and parking spots. When I pulled in, it looked abandoned. The overhead lights in the parking area were either broken or flickering. There were no other vehicles, no vending machines, No signage except for a weather-worn map behind a cracked plastic panel. It was dead silent, which honestly didn't bother me. I was exhausted and figured a quiet spot was perfect for a nap. I locked the cab doors, reclined my seat, and closed my eyes. I don't know how long I was asleep, but I woke up suddenly, heart racing, like I just had a nightmare. But I couldn't remember it. Everything around me was pitch black except for the weak glow of one flickering light about 30 feet away. I sat up, rubbed my eyes, and noticed something strange. There was now another vehicle in the lot. A dark red SUV, older model, parked 2 spots over. Its headlights were off, but I could see a silhouette in the driver's seat. They weren't moving, just sitting there, staring straight ahead. I felt a chill run down my spine. I don't know why, but the presence of that SUV felt wrong, like off. I stayed still for a while, watching. The figure in the SUV never moved. I told myself it was probably another tired driver like me. Maybe they had pulled in quietly while I was asleep. Still, I didn't like it. After maybe 10 minutes of just staring at each other, or maybe just me staring at them, I decided to just leave. I didn't need more sleep. I turned the key in the ignition. But nothing happened. Dead battery? No, that didn't make sense. My lights were working fine. I tried again. Nothing. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw the figure in the SUV slowly turn its head and look directly at me. I don't know how to explain this next part. I couldn't see their face clearly, but the way they turned, mechanical, deliberate, made every hair on my neck stand on end. It wasn't just a person, or at least, it didn't move like one. Then the SUV's headlights flicked on, and my entire cab lit up, except there was no one in the driver's seat. I swear to you, it was empty. I panicked, slammed the ignition again, and miraculously, my engine roared to life. I didn't even check my mirrors. I just threw it in gear and peeled out of the lot, tires screeching. As I merged back onto the highway, I glanced into my side mirror. The SUV wasn't there. Not parked, not following, just gone. I drove for nearly 2 hours straight without stopping. By the time I reached a truck plaza near Pueblo, I was a wreck. I parked and asked the clerk if she knew about that old rest stop near US 50. She looked at me strangely and said, "There hasn't been a rest stop out that way for over 15 years. It closed down after a man went missing. Some folks say he was murdered. Others say he just walked off into the hills one night and never came back. I don't stop at unfamiliar rest areas anymore. If I can't find a well-lit truck stop, I just keep driving. Because whatever I saw that night wasn't just some creepy driver. It was something else entirely. And I'm not going back to find out what. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe so you don't miss our next chilling horror story with new stories every week.